All right. Thank you, Natalie. And thank all of you for joining in today, and Lauren and Josh and Emery, Natalie, appreciate the opportunity to be here. You know, I really wish that the circumstances could be different, and but they're not. The circumstances are what they are, and we have to face that reality and look at how we best use our resources, ourselves and our resources, to move forward. And those are some of the things that we're going to explore today. I want to touch on the format that we're using and why the Rome team, leadership team, thought that along with me, it was a joint decision that it would be both fun and engaging and connecting for the five of us to work together to offer this presentation to you. And that is, if you look at the title of our presentation, Moving Forward with Connections, Possibility, and Hope, what better way to start than to have your presentation being a team working together to offer you something that will help you. So that's why that's why we're using the format today. And I also want to take a moment to just reflect and ask all of us together, all of you out there that together, and those of us as a team here, to offer our thoughts to those families and friends who have lost loved ones as a result of the times that we're in, of this pandemic. I would also like to offer our thoughts to all of you and to the circumstances that you are going through, whatever they are. And the most important thing for you to know is that we don't know what they are. You do. And we hope that through our time together today, that we can create a space where you will feel comfortable enough, not at the end only, but throughout our time together, to share a thought, to share a concern that you're holding, that as a team, we can together look at it and see if we can offer you an idea, a possibility, a new direction forward. So to all of you, I want you to know that you are in my thoughts, and that you are in my prayers, and that I'm glad that we have this time to share together to explore moving forward with connections, possibility, and hope. So as I was thinking about our time together today, what came up for me was Rome. Rome had, and that when this pandemic first hit, I was on the phone with a client, just hanging up, and I got a telephone call. I didn't know who it was. It was an unidentified number. And I got a telephone call, and I answered that call. And he said, hey, Demmie, this is Derek from Rome. And I said, Derek, how you doing? And he goes, well, he didn't even answer. He said, how are you doing? How are things going for you? I was so touched. It was so meaningful that he reached out, and really, genuinely, I felt it in my heart and in my soul that he wanted to know how I was doing. And he also wanted to know how my business was doing. He wasn't trying to sell me anything. He didn't want to know if I was going to keep my membership going. That never came up. And the next thing I know, we continued our conversation, and I had this tremendous opportunity to be able to be here with you today. So to Rome, I thank you for that. And it makes me want to reach out and ask the question to each one of my co-participants. So Lauren, we'll start with you. And what I want to know from each one of you is, what is one thing what's one thing that you love about Rome, the Rome community?
Yeah, definitely. So some of you may know, but some of you may not. I am one of the newest members of the Rome team. So I've been with Rome for about a month now. And I would say one of the things that I love the most about Rome is how much they make you feel like you're a part of a family. And I know that that's not just Rome team members, but that's also given your story, even Demmie, that's Rome members. There's that personalized service aspect of Rome that really creates such a community and just a family within the company that is just something that I can honestly say that I've never truly been a part of. And it is such a blessing to have that opportunity to be a part of such an incredible community and family and team.
Josh, what about you? Thank you, Lauren. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things, one of the things that I love most about Rome is just the opportunity to create environments for people to come and to just grow together. Something that I always loved doing growing up was just creating a place for my friends to come and to deepen their friendships and to create a sense of community. And so being able to do that for members and guests alike is just something that I'm passionate about. And it's just one of the many reasons that I love Rome.
All right, good. Natalie?
Definitely would echo what Lauren and Josh said. I think making people feel like a family is certainly something that Rome does really well, and given an opportunity to create environments. And I think just combining those two things kind of into being able to take care of people when they're in our space and being able to just show them hospitality, show them love, and take care of them as if they were part of our family, because if they're in our space, then we think that they are part of the Rome family, and we treat them like they are. So just being able to take people in whatever situation they might be in that day when they're in our space and take care of their time, and hopefully make their day better is just something that's really fulfilling, and I think gets all of us to work with a smile on our face on a daily basis. So.
Good. All right, thanks, Natalie. And Emery, what about you?
I'll say the same that everyone else has said, as well as just partnering with our members to help them accomplish, their businesses and just be a resource to them. I love meeting new members, new guests, and just helping them accomplish their goals and vision for their company. So being a part of, their meeting, a part of their journey is awesome.
Yeah, good. Thanks. I heard in all of your responses, I heard connection, community. I heard love. I love that, and being able to help and serve. I really heard being able to serve. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Demmie, we have a question for you too as well. Why did you choose moving forward with connections, possibilities, and hope as your topic? Love to hear some more about that.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Emery. So I was thoughtful about it, and I chose connections. And everybody has the opportunity to live their life the way they choose. That's what makes life great, right? You get to choose. And in my personal life over the years and in my professional life over the years, I have seen just a little bit of everything. And so some people choose to be what might be called a lone wolf, and that's their choice, and they are happy in that situation, and that's good, and I applaud that. I always applaud people making good choices for themselves. In difficult times, or even in good times, the juice is where the connection is. And before this COVID virus hit, one of the things I was writing about, and one of the things that I was observing within my client relationships, and my clients tend to be small to medium-sized companies, ranging anywhere from, let's say, $5 million in annual revenue to $1 billion and over $1 billion in annual revenue, and then everything kind of in between there. And before this virus hit, what I saw was a degradation in connection. And I've been observing it over the years that things were moving so fast and everything was pointed so much towards growth of the company. What do we throw at it to make it grow? And even the highest charactered leaders, the leaders with the most integrity, the leaders that were most focused on people, were being pulled more and more and more and more away from that connection. And I used to think about how can that change? Or rather, what I thought about was how can they keep doing that? How can they continue to survive, thrive, and sustain themselves and their organizations with some sense of satisfaction and joy if those connections continue to pull apart? And then the virus hits. So let me ask all of you, not just the panelists, but all of you joining us here today, what, as it relates to connection, what have you noticed about connections over the course of the last 6 weeks? And I'd like to hear from one or two of you, just put it in the form of a statement in the question routine. What have you observed? What has changed about connections? Anybody got anything to say?
I mean, I can start.
Okay.
We can give somebody time to add something. I would just say that it's definitely something that I think we have realized how much we sort of take for granted the easy, option of just jumping in your car and going to see somebody if you wanted to see somebody, or, getting together with a group of friends, because I do think that connections in that regard are incredibly important, especially during a time like this where you want to have that connection with people. But unfortunately, that's not necessarily an option. And so I think that we're just starting to realize a little bit more all of these things that seemed so simple and easy are really so much more difficult during a period like this. And they can cause, emotional, I don't want to say distress, but it gets kind of, it's sad when you don't get to have the opportunity to be in a space with people. And I think Rome is a great example of that. We like to be in the space with our people, members, guests, and team members alike. And when you're not able to do that, it definitely takes a toll.
Yes, and we had something come in on a question, and we had something come in on a chat.
Yeah, looks like we have something that says face-to-face meetings are so important. It's so much harder to convey information, answer and ask questions, etc. I don't see how technology can truly replace this. It's huge.
Yeah, that is. And along with the chat that came at one chat, now I see that we have two chats. One of the chats said, connection takes intentionality. And yeah, absolutely. And I would say absolutely to both of those. So here within this, the virus has created that we find new ways to make connection. And we have lost, unless it's within our family unit or just within our own unit space, we have lost that face-to-face. Even when we go to the grocery store, which we're allowed to do, there's a big barrier between us and the cashier. So we can have that conversation, but it's not the same. So face-to-face, there is such an important place for that, and the ability to go deeper and have more of an intimate, relational, related kind of connection. I love that you said the intentionality. Connection does take intentionality, and I don't know how many of you read the New York Times or listen to the Pamela Paul New York Times book review. It's a great podcast. And she was saying the other day, she is a very, very busy individual. And she was saying the other day that one of the things she misses about not being in her office is the water cooler chat and how much that meant to her. So there's the range on connection, right? You can have that connection that is where you sit down over coffee and you spend 30 minutes or you spend an hour, and that's important. You can have that connection where it's 5 minutes, but it still has an important connection and impact that's made. Can we see that second chat somewhere? I don't see it on mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share that with you. It says very similar to the first one, but maintaining connections takes a lot of intentionality more now than ever before. We aren't seeing people every day in the workspace, so we're having to intentionally reach out to them in order to keep that relationship going. It provides an opportunity to show them how much you care.
Yeah. So connection as an opportunity to show someone how much you care. And whether that's in a personal relationship with your family, with your friend, with your extended friends, or whether that's in a working relationship. I will tell you, in my situation, I don't have a client. I wouldn't have a client if they didn't know I cared about them. And I bet so many of you are the same. And if you think about all of the things that Josh and Emery and Natalie and Lauren said about what they love about Rome, it was all about connection. And it was all about caring connection. So that was one of the reasons, Emery, why I chose connection. And then possibility is when you are in a situation that you don't have any control over. And I guess the truth is there are very little things that we have control over, but we kind of protect ourselves by putting all kinds of things around us. But possibility is what gives you life. It's what gives you the ability to say, I can do this or I can do that. And this virus, I watched it happen all around me. For a moment, it took everybody down. What has happened? And then through those that had some form of connection, those that had the ability to say, what can I do? How can I do it? Those that could move, that created possibility for themselves, were the ones that continued to move forward. Those that kind of sat in it and are still sitting in it are, guess what? They're still sitting in it. So possibilities in themselves create hope. It's an action word. I want to say one more thing about possibilities, because I have had the opportunity, the great privilege to work with CEOs all over the country and executive leaders and emerging leaders. And they're all successful people. I'm not there to fix them. They are all strong in integrity and character. They are possibility magnets. They stay open to possibilities. That's why they continue to grow. That's why they continue to move. So possibilities becomes not only a trait for living, but it's a leadership trait as well, becoming a possibility magnet, always being willing to say yes instead of saying no. Knowing that you can say no later, but say yes, exploration, and then no. So that's why I chose possibility. And then I chose hope because I view hope as an action. And you'll hear more about that, Emery, to get back to your question. You'll hear more about hope as an action as we continue to go through our presentation together. So that's why I chose the title. I was very thoughtful and chose the title for our time together today.
That's great. Demmie, thanks so much for sharing all that. I know you mentioned that you've been coaching CEOs and executive leaders for a long time. Is there any situations that you can share that are similar to the unprecedented and unexpected times that we're in now? And maybe a little bit about what you've learned that the Rome community can also benefit from.
Yeah. So I'm going to share 2 stories with you. And it's with sadness that I share these stories. It's with sadness that we all sit within this pandemic today, and that there's a loss of life. And there's a gladness for those of us who can give and serve one another and connect with one another and keep moving forward. But these 2 stories are of unprecedented circumstance and loss. And it was beyond a privilege for me to be considered trusted enough, to deeply abiding trusted enough to walk and observe how these 2 leaders moved through this situation. So the first one, these were both technology companies, and they were, one was bigger than the other. One was about $140 million in revenue, and I worked, and the other was about $70 million in revenue, maybe 60, 55 or 60 at the time. But the first one had incredible organic growth. It was like his company was, and when I say machine, I don't really think that way, but I'm saying it, so I'll use it. They had their organic growth process down. They had people who knew how to develop relationships, make strong connections, and serve their clients. And that's why they grew. And they could replicate that over and over again because of the people that they had in place. So his organic growth was year over year over year in excess of 17, 18, 20% growth. And so they're on a trend up. And he and I met West, and he and I met for breakfast one morning, and his executive persona, was huge because things were flying so high and things were working under his leadership and for his company, tight-knit company, high-quality people. And he said, Demmie, it's time for us to continue to grow in another area. We're humming on the organic growth. I want to start an M&A, a merger and acquisition initiative. And, you and I are going to work on that together. So that was breakfast, and in probably October of 2015. And so we have our regularly scheduled times together where we're working through this plan. He was a very thoughtful leader. He was a very planned leader. He didn't make quick decisions at all. Sometimes it was very difficult for me that he wouldn't make a decision. And on December the 29th, 28th, we had a meeting at 7:30 in the morning on the 29th by phone. And I got an email from him at about 7:30 the night before saying that he was going to have to postpone that meeting. Something had come up. I got an email from him the next morning saying he had a family situation arise. It was serious, and he would get back to me. About 4 days later, I get an email from him, and his wife had a tragic accident and was on life support. And he and his 2 daughters were with her. And that's where they stayed for the next X period of time. I'm thinking it was 3 weeks before he made the decision to take her off life support. I can only imagine that even though I was sort of close in, you could be here, I was sort of here. Of course, he and his family were devastated. Some might call that a trauma. And he stayed in touch with me all along the way. And a month, he was a changed person. What used to be, this is what he said to me once, Demmie, I'm a one-trick pony. Anybody know what that means? That meant his work was his number one priority. Guess what changed? And he knew he had a family, and he knew that he had a company that was a family, and he had to keep that moving forward. That was resilience beyond comprehension, his ability to keep moving forward. He did the right things. He got the right counseling. He did the things he needed to do for his family. As it related to his company, he got the people, of course, moved up to a higher vision that they knew they had to. He had always been looked at as, the person, and now they had to be able to step up to a higher vision of themselves as leaders so that they could keep the company leading forward. And guess what he did? For himself, he kept the M&A initiative moving forward. Why do you think he did that? Because at the time, I'm thinking to myself, why is he doing that? I didn't know why he was doing it. I probably would have, I don't know what I would have done. I don't want to know what I would have done. We kept our regular, in fact, we bumped up our cadence of our contact with one another, someone who he trusted, and he kept working on his vision, something that could take him out of the deep grief and loss that he was feeling, which was real and wasn't going to go away. But for moments at a time, he could step outside of that and he could say, here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going. Looking back on that time, he gave himself a vision of a new life instead of staying in what was so drastically difficult. So we stayed in that space for years. He wasn't ready to move. He wasn't ready to make a change. He had to sit right where he was, but he kept moving forward with that plan. Fortunately, today, I can tell you that his merger and acquisition initiative has been very successful. His company has continued to grow. He and his daughters will always grieve that loss. They'll never be the same. He's not a one-trick pony anymore. There are many, many more things in his life that are more important to him than his work. That was his lesson. It was a big lesson. The resilience that I saw, the fortitude and his willingness to accept his reality. He didn't try to pretend. He didn't try to fake it. He didn't try to say this, I'm okay, put on this big persona again. He lived through it. So that's that story. So let me pause right there. Any thoughts, or what stands out for you about that story? You can put it in the chat, or you can put it in the question, or from anybody, any of my teammates.
Well, I just want to say that go ahead.
I just think that it's incredibly brave, and it is inspirational to hear a story of something that kind of, obviously in so many ways it is different than what we're going through, but in a lot of ways it is similar to what's happening right now, and the fact that we're all going through a really difficult time, and it does feel like, how are we going to move forward from this? And so it's just really inspirational to hear a story of somebody who had so much and then had so much kind of taken away, but still had that goal in mind, that vision in mind, and did what it took to get to where he wanted to be to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, and I would say that it's really admirable of you, Demmie, just to be there as a support system for him through that. I think it just goes hand in hand with your entire message today of connections, possibility, and hope, and how those three things are really what are going to pull us through what we're experiencing now. And it's so, I think that it's a popular belief to not ask for help, but the reality is that at some point in our lives, we all need help. And so I think that it's great that we have this community where we're able to partner together and just share that hope together and be able to be vulnerable and ask for help too.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
We've got an anonymous question. It says, what are other ways of using our connections to thrive in this COVID situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, what comes up for me is that a couple of things. One is taking you back to the Rome connection, and where the leaders of Rome were stepping out. I don't know if all of you got that same call that I got. I hope you did, but got that call where you're saying, I just wanted to check on you. So using your connections and to reach out and be caring and show your concern. That's a possibility. You never know what's going to come out. I had no idea through that interaction on the phone that I'd have the opportunity to be with all of you today. So that's one thought about connections. The other is that, when I started DBH Consulting 26 years ago now, I was, it came from a failed place too. I mean, very often you'll find that success starts with failure. And I was kind of at a failed place personally and professionally. I was 37 years old, didn't know what I was going to do. So what do you do when you don't know what you're going to do? You start a consulting firm. And what I did know was that there were certain people that believed in me and that had seen my potential at various times before this particular failed situation. And so I reached out to one person, and I thought, I can call Sharon. And she was an executive with a company. And I said, Sharon, I am going out on my own. Josh, this speaks to what you just said. It was the scariest phone call I've ever made. And I reached out to Sharon and I said, I am going out on my own. And if you've got a project or anything that I can do for you, I will do it. And I meant that. I had no parameters around it. I just knew I needed to start. I needed somebody that believed in me. And she said, thank you so much. She was appreciative, and that shocked me and helped lift me up. And she said, thank you, Demmie, so much for calling me. I will call you back on Friday. So I wait by the phone until Friday. And on Friday, the phone rings. And just like she said she would, because she was a woman of integrity and a great leader, she called me back. And she said, we've got a project for you. It was just enough. You know, God works in great ways. And it was just enough to pay my mortgage payment. That project. Well, that project turned into, I don't really want to throw numbers around, but it was huge. It was a huge project over a term of about a 9-year period of time. But more importantly than the money that I made in that project was that the exposure that I got to CEOs, and it's really what created the relationships and the opportunity for me to create relationships and connections. So, there is always an opportunity, and I believe people leave their they play them short. That, your connections are so incredibly valuable, not because of the money that they can bring you, but because of the multitude of possibilities and gifts that they can bring you. And I think it's a matter of sitting down with them who are your connections, and looking at them and saying, who do I have the strongest relationships with? And then where would the next tier be? And where would the next tier be? And gauging how much you can go out and be careful with them, meaning care for them, show care and concern for them. And how much can you share with them where you're at, and ask if there's a way that you can be of service, and let the possibilities open up. And there'll be plenty of people that will say no, and there'll be plenty of people, or just that one is all it takes, that will say yes. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Is there another one in there?
I think that's great. I have a question, and you've kind of started to touch on this a little bit, and I just think that it's kind of a good posture to kind of come into, just given what we're going through. And you sort of started talking about creating possibilities. You went out on your own. So I'm just curious if you have any other experiences with creating these possibilities, especially when it seems as if all the doors are closed and just continue to close, and sort of what that looks like.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have found invaluable to me since the very beginning, so we're talking of a span of 26 years here that I've had my practice, is to not be in it alone, to speak to what Josh said, to not be in this alone, but to have, if only one person that I consider my thinking partner, and that's a term that I use a lot in my practice, to have a thinking partner, somebody that I trust, that I can share my thoughts with and my ideas with, that can help me see the possibilities that I'm not seeing. So that's an idea that I would really share with you to recommend. And you might even have 2 or 3. So bringing in your resources, having a group of people, one individual, a group of people, where you are just open and keeping yourself open. I spoke to this earlier when I said, say yes instead of say no. That's a blind spot that a lot of people have, is something will come at you. And Lauren, I got to tell you, this is what I loved about you yesterday when we started talking about, hey, you want to do this differently? You were so open to the possibility of doing it differently. And so was every member of the panel. So possibilities are going to come from an openness, and they're going to come from an awareness, and they're going to come from what you're taking in. So what are you reading? What are you listening to? Who are you talking to? So you want to expand even in the midst of, and even you have even more time to do it now. Read a newspaper that you haven't read, read a novel. You got all kinds of ideas come from that. listen to a podcast that's not the same podcast that you always listen to. So bring in the information and say yes before you say no. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. I love that. And I was very excited when you brought up the opportunity to be able to make this as a panel rather than just, you sharing all this great information. So I think it's not only been beneficial, I'm sure, to everybody that's participating, but to each of us as well. So definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, good.
It looks like we have a question that came in. Would you say that vulnerability can breed possibility? Can you extrapolate this with another case study?
That's a great question. So I would say vulnerability certainly has a direct connection with possibility. And here's why. When you can make yourself vulnerable to somebody or to an event or to a group of people, when you show up authentically and that authentic side speaks for itself, authenticity, but you are who you really are. So you're willing to say, you know what? I don't have any money coming in this month. And I don't know what I'm going to do about it. And, it might just be you, the single person, or it might be you and your family. But so vulnerability is a direct path to being able to connect with someone in a different way. And so if I come to Lauren and I'm all puffed up and I'm like, Lauren, my practice is great. Can't wait till I get back out on the tennis court, which I don't play tennis, by the way, but can't wait till I, get to go back outside and take in the sunshine and everything is great. And, this is just nothing. Then what's Lauren got to work with? Lauren, what do you have to work with?
Not a whole lot.
Right. But if I come to Lauren, as I did earlier, because she asked me and she said, Demmie, have you been busy through this time? And I said, well, my existing clients need more of me. And so I am there and ready and available. But I will tell you this, they're not paying me more because I'm not asking for more. I'm feeling that. And I also said, my practice isn't growing. I don't know that I would expect it to be growing right now. It might be, it might not be. So I don't really know, but I shared the truth. So Lauren now knows that a little bit more about me and that I'm willing to work to serve. And because that matters to me, because when you serve, you always get back. It always somehow comes back, and that my clients aren't growing. So I'm probably like a lot of us out there. And Lauren, what does that do for you when you hear that?
I mean, I think that I just think it's really important. I liked the way that person asked the question about vulnerability, just because I think that vulnerability does allow us to get to know somebody on a more personal level. And so I think that, having the opportunity before we got on here today to just be able to sort of dig a little deeper and create connection in asking some of those questions just does allow for us to, create more possibilities for ourselves. So I do think that that's really important. And I think that that's a great way to explain that and to sort of showcase that.
Yeah, good. Do we have another question? Oh, yeah, Natalie.
I have a question. So you touched on it in a little bit, and I think that the vulnerability question kind of leads lends itself well to what I was thinking, just because so many things are different. This is unprecedented, and sometimes we have to go back to the drawing board and kind of start from scratch in some ways. So what about imagination? Like, how can we use imagination and creativity to move us forward?
Okay, great. So one of the things I see is, and again, you have to be willing to change. And and a lot of times people don't see that they're not willing to change. So that's where that thinking partner can be so valuable. Someone that you trust that's willing to say to you, hey, Natalie, you're not willing to change. All right. So, so what I would hope would be all of the participants, each one of you, we all have our plan. That plan may be, one piece of paper. We had our plan for today, what we were going to do. And you find yourself in a situation where the 7 things on that plan that you were going to accomplish in 2020 or through 2023, they're not going to work anymore. So your ability to sit down and think through and imagine through. All right, so thinking and imagine are 2 different sides of the brain. So thinking is probably generally going to take you back to that plan that you've got, going around in circles and saying, how do I make this work? How do I make this work? How do I make this work? But imagining means, what is out there that I'm not seeing, and how can I see it? So here's an exercise that you can use to engage your imagination if you so choose to use it. So, and you may never ever have thought about this, and you may have thought about this, but just try. I'm going to ask you, invite you to try it. And that is just sit down with a pad of paper or your desktop, laptop, whatever you have, and imagine that you're going to write a book. So just say, my book. And what I want you to do is to jot down the first 5 chapters. What's the title of the first chapter? What's the title of the second chapter? What's the title of the third chapter? All the way down to 5. Just what's the title of the chapter? Just give me 5 titles. Just let yourself go. Nobody's going to look at it. You're the only one that's going to look at it. Don't even want a title to the book. Just what are the first 5 chapters? And see what emerges. Oftentimes, that exercise will engage your imagination. You can go anywhere you want to go. You can get on a flying carpet, and you can let that flying carpet take you. So you might use that as your starter and say, use that flying carpet to take you to that first chapter. Where am I going? And then where am I going next? So just sometimes I will get on the floor with I have some beautiful Italian glass marbles, and I'll put my marbles down on the floor. And I'll just start playing marbles. So I just want to get rid of that thinking brain. And all I want to do is just let those colors move around, let those circles and move around and see what shapes that they make. Engage that imagination part and just see what comes up. Also, having said that, a lot of people tell me that they have their best ideas when they're exercising. I know I can have some great ideas when I'm exercising. The key there is to write them down. And don't say no before you say yes. Was that helpful?
Yeah, that was super helpful. I think that most of the panelists can probably agree that we as a team at Rome have had to get creative and get imaginative and kind of think outside the box, since the majority of what we all do is in operations day to day and being in the space. And so we had to kind of do what you said and just kind of open ourselves up to endless possibilities and be imaginative, which is what brought us the webinars. And we saw a gap that could be filled that we weren't currently filling because we'd never been in this situation before. So yeah, we like to think it's good. We like to think that good things come from being imaginative.
Yeah, well, I think you've shown a lot of imagination for sure, and everybody has. I think the key thing is to ask the question about how can I engage my imagination. So if you're not, if you're not one to engage your imagination, but you keep yourself in thinking mode more, just sit down and say, how can I engage my imagination? Pick up a stone, pick up a marble, pick up a whatever, you do something different. Just do something different. But it sounds like the Rome team has really engaged their imagination, and you've been seamless with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to share one more quick story because I think it engages imagination. And I'm going to cut out all the long details and just tell you that I work with a CEO, and he was in his second year. So I went through his emerging leader program with him. He was a part of my emerging leader program. And then he stepped up, CEO. It was probably a $50 million company when he stepped up. In his second year, the company suffered a personal loss. I'll just leave it at that. And everybody was shaken to their core. So he comes to our sessions together, and he said, Demmie, people are asking for, and they did all the right things. They brought in all the right people and the people to support them. But in our time together, he said, I am envisioning. So see, he's envisioning. So when you're in a situation where you have no control, what the first CEO did is he envisioned his future. And he spent a lot of time writing that down. This CEO did the same thing. He envisioned his future for his company. How can I bring my company together? Just like what Rome, all of you leaders did with Rome. How do we bring ourselves together to keep ourselves moving forward? And he said, what I'm envisioning, Demmie, is a one-page song sheet of music. That's what he called it. A one-page sheet of music. So he was imagining music. How beautiful is that? And that we would all play off this one sheet of music, and that we would have harmony, because at that time there was disharmony. So he and I worked on, and it wasn't notes, we weren't working on notes, right? But for a song sheet, but we worked on what he envisioned, keyword, his possibility. He was creating possibility for what would bring his company together again, connection, that connection that they had lost.
That's excellent.
Yeah. All right. Anything come in that we need to address? Or are we good on the questions and the chats?
I think we're all caught up right now.
All right. So let me summarize, and then if there are any other questions, and I want to also hand it over to all of you if you have any last thoughts. But the leaders that I work with, the first question I ask them when we engage, whether there's a pandemic or not, is what's your practice? And for some, that practice may be exercise. For some, that practice may be nature. It may be a religious and spiritual practice. It may be that they read poetry. Everybody makes their own choices about that. But what's your practice? So that when you find yourself in a situation, because this may be a pandemic that's hit us globally, but we're human. We're part of humanity. There will be times in our lives when things come up that we were not planning on. And as individuals and as leaders, that we have to be prepared, that we have to know how to navigate when we find ourselves there. So having that practice, that something that you look to, that you know is going to be there, that you can lean on and hold, just encourage you to lean in, lean in, lean in. The second thing that all of the people that I work with, they have those connections. That some of them might have a circle like this, some of them might have a little bit bigger circle. They're pretty tight. They're tight connections, family and professional connections. They're resources where they know that they can go and they can get just trust, and they can get strong perspective. Strong perspective is important. Okay. And again, I'm repeating this. People in life, I think, not just leaders that I work with, but people in life that can open themselves to possibility and to an attitude of possibility and of grace, no matter what the circumstance, those are the people that keep moving forward. And I wish I could see all of you participants down there and know that it's probably every single one of you, if you're a part of Rome. If you're a part of the Rome community, you're there for a reason. And you give something and you get something. And I know in working with the Rome leaders that I've worked with in the last day, that they recognize that as well. And when you think about those things, each one of those things, they're not passive. They are not passive. They are taking action. They are taking action. So what you end up with is hope. Hope in action. Not hope as an emotion that might be, but hope in action that is life-giving. Lauren? Oh, I wanted to ask you, before I send it to you, Lauren, though, I wanted to ask each one of the leaders of Rome, what's one thing that stands out for you about our shared experience today? And participants, be thinking if you want to chime in, we want to hear from you.
I think something that stands out to me is that vulnerability question, and just how that vulnerability does allow for information sharing, which is really going to create the possibilities that we're all looking for. And it's really just going to deepen the connections that we do have with one another. And I know, Demmie, that you spoke on a couple of different tragic situations where hope emerged at the end of that process. And I think that it's really important too that we, make a note that it doesn't necessarily have to be something tragic that happens where we create that opportunity for vulnerability. That opportunity exists in all of our lives and all of our connections, regardless of whether or not we're experiencing something that is, deeply tragic. So I think that that's what stands out to me the most.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, Demmie, going off that, I really like the part about hope as an action. And I think in this time right now, we need hope more than ever. So I appreciate you talking about that. I think the topics were very relevant to what's going on now. And I appreciate the lean in and the attitude of finding your things that you can, focus in on and find hope in. So I appreciate everything you've given us today.
We did have a couple of comments come in from people who are attending. One of them states, I love that you said success starts with failure. The idea of failure is scary, but the best things truly come out of it. So that was one takeaway from one of our attendants. And then one other one was, love the concept of thinking versus imagining. How powerful our imagination can be if we are intentional to allow it.
Great.
So cool. So cool.
So cool. Yeah, that's right. All right. So, Lauren?
Yeah.
It's yours?
I have one question that came in that I want to give to you just real quick, that says, Demmie, in your career, what have been things that you lean in and hold to encourage you through challenging seasons?
Yeah. So, one of the things I've learned is that, and I never imagined that I would have, even within this pandemic, I never imagined that I would have the life that I have today. I have love. I have connection. I have family. So at that place where I started, where I considered myself a big personal and professional failure, I had all that love and family and connection then, but I couldn't let it in, and I didn't know how to see it. But fast forward 26 years, and today I'm like, I wash in it every day. I experience a lot of joy, even though I have to wear my face mask when I go outside. I experience joy. And I think, Josh, this is what you were talking about, right? It's experiencing life and the joy and the satisfaction in the moment right now with all of us together. So, gratitude is such an important reality for us to embrace and to come from our soul and our heart. And sometimes it's hard for me to express my gratitude for my life and the grace that I've been given. So I have leaned heavily beyond everything else in my life. First and foremost, I lean on that power that is greater than me. For me, I lean on that. And it's a daily experience and meditation. And, I have to know that this universe, whether you call it universe, whether you call it God, whether you call it whatever name you choose, I lean on that first and foremost. And then secondly, I have leaned on my own path to self-awareness. So 26 years ago, I didn't have much self-awareness. And I certainly wasn't actualizing my dreams. And so I did something really smart. And the greatest gift I gave myself was that I started down a path of arduous self-discovery. Who am I? What do I know about me? What do I like? What are my strengths? What are my where are my blind spots? How do I continue to grow? And I have stayed on that path of self-discovery as a hobby. My brother, who I know is on the line, who's a Rome community member, he loves it too. He once told me, when I said, what's my greatest strength? And he said, your self-awareness. It's a hobby for you. So that is what I have relied on, was a continual path. And I've engaged people in my life that were teachers, that were mentors, teachers, mentors, counselors, whatever I needed at the time to continue to grow. And here's a key word: to continue to grow and to continue to evolve. You can only put out what you take in. So if I'm only taking in this much, this narrow path, that's all I can put out. But if I'm taking in this kind of expansion, that's what I can put out in service to others. So I hope that answered the question.
That's great.
Yeah. Demmie, just kind of thinking through, kind of going back to your question, I mean, I think that there are numerous takeaways for sure. But I think that just going back to the simplicity of what connection can look like, and it doesn't have to be anything huge or groundbreaking or reinventing the wheel, just a simple reaching out to somebody and seeing how they're doing and making that connection, like Derek did with you and like you did with your friend Sharon, I think you said her name was, when you first started TBH Consulting. So I think so often we think that it has to be this grand gesture or something that has never been done before, to start something new or to start over or to start a new chapter. And I think that you reminding us that it can be the simplicity of the connection is encouraging, because it's something that we're all capable of. So I love knowing that we're all capable of accomplishing that.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much for bringing that up, because I think, people oftentimes use the term game changer. That simple phone call to someone that I could trust. I didn't have any control over what the answer would be. Had it been no, it wasn't, so I didn't have to do this. But had it been no, I hope that I would have taken the next action and made the next phone call. And the neat thing about, if you're at a point in your career, or because of this situation where you were going down a path and all of a sudden that path has stopped and you don't see that door opening again, here's what I want you to imagine. So we did the book titles, but I want you to also imagine that door has closed. But now imagine that there are 3 more doors going down that walkway. You've got 3 more doors to open, and I want to invite you, without knowing, just walk through the door. Just walk through it. It's not a just. I'm encouraging you to walk through the door.
That's so cool. I think for me, one of the, obviously, like Natalie said, there's been so many great takeaways from our time together today, but I really like the idea of what you call a thinking partner. I think that that's really an important person to have in your life, that you trust, that you are able to be vulnerable with, that's going to be open and honest with you. Because I think sometimes we do shy away from maybe sort of turning off that thinking brain and coming more into that imagination brain, because we're not really sure what it's going to produce and if it's going to even produce anything good. And so I think it is really cool to have somebody in your life that you can have next to you, sort of feeding into you, and vice versa, you pouring into them and then pouring into you. And I just think that is a really cool concept, and definitely something that every person can really benefit from. So that was a huge takeaway for me, and definitely something to think about, and sort of a mindset shift when moving forward, and kind of creating and imagining.
Yeah. So, and I want to share this too, because this is really important. And whether you are being asked to be a thinking partner, or whether you're asking someone to be a thinking partner, the power is in the question. The power is in the question.
Great. So cool. I don't know if anyone has any additional questions. We did have one other comment that just stated, community of those around us during uncertain times is something that pulls a group and individuals together. It's amazing that vulnerability can build a bridge to forge connections. Thank you for keeping that at the forefront of our minds. I believe we will see the importance of others around us and how key it is to be aware of the things that have been given to us. Awesome reminder. Love it.
Love it.
That's great. Well, Demmie, do you have any closing statements that you wanted to give to our attendants?
Just how grateful I am that we have all shared this time together, and I love all the interaction that has just been tremendous. And to the leaders of Rome, you are all awesome, and take it away.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, suggesting this type of format. I think that this has been really fun for us as well to kind of be interactional with you. So that's been really great. And thank you to everybody who was able to attend today. We hope that you were able to get as much out of this as we were. I do want to invite anyone who is interested. We are going to have another webinar coming up next Tuesday with Rome member Steve Cesari. He is going to be coming into his third part of staying up in a down economy. He's going to be talking about e-commerce and the importance of that, especially during a time like this. If you'd like to register for that, we will be sending out an email today with a link for that, as well as a link to a video so that you can come back to this specific session and review. And so, Demmie, thank you again. Thank you to all my fellow panelists today for helping out. And we hope everybody has a great day and a wonderful weekend.